Why? Why? Why do characters act? Hey everyone, I'm not dressed as fancy as before, but forgive me, today has been nerve-wracking. The phone has decided at some point that it didn't have enough storage and it deleted my video. So since my phone deleted my video, we could either cry together in a corner, which, believe me, I did. But apart from that, we can also take it on as an opportunity to make it even better and give you all this wonderful swill of air to look at. As it's the end of the day, I'm no longer perfect, I'm no longer beautiful, but you're gonna take me as I am. As always, you will find the script of this video in the description down below in my blog, and you can go visit the blog, like the script, and probably follow the emailing list. But most of all, if you like this video and find value in it, give it a like, give me a subscribe, and we can meet each other in the next one, and we're gonna find so much good out of this friendship. So, we have all come across probably your character's why in terms of why we have to think about this why. And the easy answer is we have to think about it because it's what draws the story forward. So if the character doesn't have a why, it's gonna be tricky because the story is not gonna be there. And this why can be something that goes along a very simple story, like someone going to grocery shop, but makes it interesting because this why has inside our character's personality and our character's uniqueness. Because what if that person going grocery shopping is actually a compulsive spender that is unable to go anywhere without spending thousands, including grocery shopping, which might sound crazy to some of us, but what if he did? What if someone like that existed, which I think probably does, so it's not so far-fetched. And you can make your story as interesting as you want, even with that little piece, or you can make it as big as you want with an imagery of war, world conflict, as everything that is happening in the world right now, basically, at any given time. This is a first important question that we have an answer to, but now we must consider different genres, because for some genres the level of research that you do to define your character's why is more important than others. The surroundings of a character will of course impact their why, because in any given case there will be somewhere that they're at, and even in very controversial stories that don't really have a specific landscape, there still needs to be somewhere where this character is. And if you want to do a realistic fiction, you have to research the place that you're going to set it in, unless it's in your living room. If it's in your living room, you don't need any research, but if you need to set it in a public place like a police station or a hospital, you need to reflect it a bit more. And in my personal story, I am setting it, the first part, in a clinic, well, a hospital mostly. So I have to research how anorexic patients in hospitals work and what they do, what they are told to do, and all of that jazz, because I've never been myself. So I need to talk to very poor people that suffered from anorexia, much more severe way than I did. And we also have to consider that if perhaps we are doing historical fiction, we have to think about how much research is going to be needed to make our piece sound truthful. And it can give us very much credibility to know what we are talking about. So it's very important to be sure to do a good job, but at the same time, in the case of historical fiction especially, we need to think that our character's conflict is going to do the job. So the character is the most important part, and all of the surroundings have to be very detailed, but don't have to be perfect 100% because it can have some tweaking. And so I think that for my personal answer is, where do we draw the boundary between research and fantasy is when you as a writer feel that you have enough knowledge to be knowledgeable enough to have credibility for your reader and to give them the information they need. They don't need to know everything, do they? But enough so that they don't feel betrayed. This is a very important thing. And now we have to talk about how detailed do we want all of this to be? Well, in Story Genius, the wonderful book that I'm reading about writing technique, the author says very specific. Very specific because, as we said, the character is the one that is gonna do the job. So in our character's why, we have to include everything that they have to tell us. Every part of their power, their names, something very specific that is gonna make them stand out of the crowd, because if we are all working on the same premises, we are gonna make stories that are incredibly different from each other thanks to the unique nature of our characters. Another very important question remains, and that question is, how are we going to find this character's why? In most stories, I think that especially at the beginning when we start thinking about the story, we already have in mind something similar to our character's why, a story that we want to tell. But in order to make it very specific, what I suggest and what I think is very important is to have a sit-down chat with your character. You're gonna have a cup of tea, you're gonna sit next to your character in a very nicely furnished bedroom or room in general, and you're gonna start asking them questions. These are the questions that I suggest you ask your character before beginning a story. Where do you come from? Who are your parents? Did something happen in your childhood to influence the way you act? Childhood trauma is every writer's favorite, but it's not the only way to go about it. If not, is any unsolved trauma at the root of your motives? Because the trauma doesn't always have to be children's trauma. It can also be adulthood trauma, or I don't know, any other trauma you can think about. If not, do you have a strong goal you want your character to pursue and why? If it doesn't have to be a trauma, it can be a hero kind of story where your character has the incredible goal of saving the world, and we all want to see how this ends. If not, is an illness the cause of your actions? In my story, personally, yes. It's an illness what we are dealing with because we are dealing with anorexia. It's not the only motive, but it's a big one. So these are, for me, the questions you have to ask yourself when building your character's why, and thinking about a very interesting character's why in the Harry Potter series. You know what I'm talking about. Every character has his own why or her own why. It's incredible. In stories that are that well made, there is very little to criticize, but in some stories, creating a character's why can be very fundamental for the main character, but then people can kind of forget that the secondary characters have to have a why too, and make them stand there as props that serve to the end of the main character but don't really have a personality themselves or any wants, wishes or reasons why they act. They are just there. This has been criticized about the book 100 Days of Sunlight, and I agree with that because in some instances some of the side characters were very much used as props, not really as people. But in Harry Potter that doesn't happen because every single character has his or her own motive. Harry has his own. He wants to kill Voldemort for all the reasons that he builds up in the book. It doesn't start from there, but he has to save the world because it's a battle between him and Voldemort, so they cannot do anything about it. Then, apart from that, we have Voldemort's motive, and he wants to kill the world because he doesn't feel love and he doesn't care about anyone and wants power, and that's all he wants. So it's very much something that he roots for. Then we have everyone else's motives. We have one of my favorite is Snape's motive, why he acts, and it's so beautiful that he acts all in the name of the love for Lily. Is great, and I think that is what makes a story special, giving each character his or her own why. In my personal story, I have created a story's why that I'm gonna read to you now, and I hope that you're gonna like it. I personally love it. It's not complete, the version that I'm gonna read to you, because I don't want to give away too much. I just want to show you something about my wonderful characters, and the rest you will discover as we go along, as I will publish more of my story and as I will create it with all of you on my side. My project follows the lives of two anorexic patients recovered in hospital, Autumn and Saffron. They are both soon discharged, but if Autumn is fully recovered and ready to come back to life, Saffron is still very much intention to take back her anorexic habits. And this time she has not intention to stop. Being conscious of how much of a burden she is for her parents, she doesn't want to be away anymore. Her rush towards oblivion is accompanied by Autumn's desire to find a brother he has lost every contact with after he lost his family and plunged into anorexia. The challenge for Saffron is double: to help Autumn in his mission and to get thin without anyone noticing. And she succeeds in both objectives, but the results she finds are not the ones she hopes. With her body giving way in its weakness, she is carried by a heartbroken Autumn to hospital, where everything will change. I'm very much in love with my story's premise and at the same time story's why, because you can see the why in this premise, because Autumn wants to find the brother he has lost because he values family, and Saffron wants to become thin because she believes she is a burden to her parents. And that is what makes my own story unique, because stories about anorexia are pretty much everywhere if you look for them. But I really feel that it's going to make it special, and I really hope that you found value in this video and that you will find the means to make your own story special thanks to this guide. You can go to the website, copy and paste the questions somewhere and answer them, and you can even paste them in the comments below, because I really want to see where your story is going. I want to see who your characters are, and I want to be involved in your creative process as you are involved in mine. I really hope you enjoyed this video, enjoyed my swiggly hair, and I really hope you will stick around and we will see each other next time.